So, welcome everyone to the Bhakti Gyana course of chapter 4, where we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, and we'll start off with the prayers. So, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschita Desatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda. So we pray that we fully attain this knowledge and are able to apply it. And let's start. So the chapter 4 and the summary of it is extremely interesting. We discuss a lot of the actual knowledge and the gyan behind our philosophy, because this isn't just dry philosophy. The Bhagavad Gita isn't just empty, philosophical ideas. There is that's why it's known as the science of God. That's why we look at the actual knowledge behind it, the spiritual knowledge behind it as well. So chapter 4 is called Transcendental Knowledge, and the summary is that we discuss what is known as Shruti and what is known as Smriti. Now Shruti is known as that which is heard. So in ages before us, so the Satyug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, people would hear such knowledge, they would remember it, assimilate it, and perfectly communicate it to the next person without any adulteration. What's happened in our age is that we start to treat this as, Chinese whispers. Someone says something, we're not even able to apply it to ourselves, leave alone telling the other person exactly what was said. So we're practically incapable of actually communicating it properly to the next person, so we sometimes bring in our own interpretations to it. So that's the difference between Kali Yuga and the other yugas, is that we aren't able to remember that knowledge and assimilate it properly and communicate it properly without adulteration. So transcendental knowledge is actually known as the knowledge which outlines how the people can establish their divine connection with God. So transcendental, I'm sure a lot of us have heard that word a lot in relation to Krishna or in relation to God, and that's why knowledge itself is also, we try to relate this knowledge to God, and establish, of course, our connection with Him. And a famous Vedic quote is that we aim to see God through the ears rather than the eyes. So a lot of people claim to say, oh, why can't we see your God? Why can't we see Him? If He should be there, we should be able to see it. But there's a lot of things that we know are there that we cannot see. For example, oxygen, molecules, blah, blah, blah. We can't see these things, but we know they are present. But with God, yes, although we are unable to see Him, unless you're a pure devotee, right, you will not be able to see Krishna everywhere. And that's just how it is. Some people are too conditioned to be able to see Krishna in places, and they come up with their own interpretations. So what we do through the Gita and through the Bhagavatam and through other forms of philosophy, or we actually try to hear what God says and what His devotees say, rather than to be able to see Him. And so the themes of the chapter are how transcendental knowledge is passed down and its effect, how the Lord reciprocates with everyone, so how, it's a two-way relationship, it's a mutual relationship, and the types of karma, action, forbidden action, and inaction, so karma, vikarma, and akarma, and the importance of knowledge and taking shelter of a guru. So these are, very important themes. So can I please get a reader to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Would you like to start?
Hi, Prabhuji. Hi.
Okay, yes, go for it, Isha.
Yeah, hi. Okay. Text 1. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to Sun God, Vivasna, and Vivasna instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and the Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciples. disciplic succession, and the sanity kings understood it in that. But in a course of time, succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to pass. Text 3. That very ancient science and science of the relationship with Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Text 4. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivasna is senior by birth. How am I understood that in the beginning you instructed the science to him? The personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. Can I remember all of them? But you cannot. So I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subdued of the enemy. Text 6. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, or descendant of Brahma, and a predominant rise of religion, and at that time I descend myself to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principle of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. One who knows the transcendent nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his oath again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode over him. 10. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attain transcendent love.
Thank you so much, Babuji. Really nicely read. So the summary of verses from 1 to 10. Just as every gadget comes with an instruction manual, this entire universe comes with guidelines which enlighten one about its purpose and function. So just like everything, everything has an instruction manual. A new gadget, and furniture that we buy from IKEA, even that has instruction manuals. So how can the entire universe, how can it just be made on its own? How can it not have a creator and enlighten one about its purpose and function? So these things really make us think, Atheist logic doesn't make sense, because everything has a manual about how it works and what its purpose is. So how can this entire universe not? Such guidelines are found in ancient scriptures, so the Vedas, which contain knowledge of divine origin imparted at the time of creation. So Krishna explains how this eternal sort of like education system, how was it fully set up by him? This system perpetuates in the universe through qualified and saintly persons who impart spiritual knowledge to the masses in a dynamic, relevant, and practical way. So here it's explained that we have to search for a saint who is actually qualified enough to impart the spiritual knowledge. So we just don't go to, again, a bona fide guru. Who is that? Someone who has actually understood the Vedas himself and is able to pass it down with disciplic succession. So that's what he explains. And then he talks about how the material creation it's like basically a university where we rediscover our relationship with God. So, everything has levels to it, and this material birth for us is it's like supposed to be like a PhD for why we need God. And then as the creator and maintainer, Krishna periodically appears in the world to re-inject spirituality, remove materialistic influences, and ensure the smooth functioning of the universe. So he explains how he creates it, maintains it, and then destroys it. So that's why we call Krishna. Another name for Krishna is Hari. Hari is someone who takes everything away. But then, of course, we also know that as Vishnu, he maintains, and then he has Brahma to create it. But he himself creates, maintains, and destroys. And imagine how boring it gets for him. He has to keep on doing it again and again, just because people don't understand their actual sort of aim in life. And imagine how boring it is. You keep doing the same thing over and over again for people who don't even realize who you are. And that's where the mercy of Krishna really comes into place. There's no one more merciful than him. He's done it so many times. He keeps doing it, and he still takes care of everyone who doesn't even know about him, and even after knowing him, disregards him. So understanding Krishna is actually the secret to success. Obviously, it's really hard. We have to be a really pure devotee for it, but learning the Bhagavad Gita is genuinely the first step. So lesson 15, as Krishna explains in text 9, that one who knows his activities and appearance goes back to the spiritual world. On this basis, we should try to read a portion of the Krishna book by Srila Prabhupada regularly. This is a really good book, which is what I've been told by everyone. I haven't actually read it myself, but I'm really, really trying to get my hands on it. And it's actually being passed down from my family, so my uncle's going to pass it on to me next after he finishes reading it. But I've been told it's an amazing book, and it's just a book about all his pastimes. Everything that Krishna does is in that book. So it's an extract from chapter 11 in the Krishna book, and it says, sometimes Mother Yashoda used to ask Krishna to bring her a wooden plank for sitting. Although the wooden plank was too heavy to be carried by a child, still somehow or other Krishna would bring it to his mother. Sometimes his father, while worshipping Narayana, would ask him to bring his wooden slippers, and Krishna, with great difficulty, would put the slippers on his head and bring him to his father. When he was asked to lift some heavy article and was unable to lift it, he would simply move his arms. In this way, daily, at every moment, he was the reservoir of all pleasure for his parents. The Lord was exhibiting such childish dealings with the inhabitants of Vrindavana because he wanted to show the great philosophers and sages searching after the absolute truth how Supreme Truth, Personality of Godhead, is controlled by and subject to the desire of his pure devotees. So I know that was really, really wordy, but in one sense, what it's saying is everything that Krishna was asked to do, he would do it in one way or another. And he wouldn't even try, of course he possesses all power, but he would still do it in such a childish manner, and it would actually please his parents so much. Of course his parents were unaware that, they to some extent knew that this child was so special and so lucky for them, but the way Krishna used to act sometimes as a child, he was like it says, the reservoir of all their pleasure. So he would simply move his arms if he was unable to lift something, just like a child does, throw tantrums when Mother Yashoda goes away. And today is Damodar month, so a big hearty congratulations to everyone for that. Today is also like a similar story, when Mother Yashoda went to fix her burning pot, he threw a tantrum, and he threw a rock at the milk, the butter pot, and his childish pastimes just evoke so much rasa. They have so much nectar in it, and it just shows how subject he is to his devotees. He can do anything, even if it means acting like a child for his devotees. So, just before I move on, Prabhuji, anything to add?
Oh, explained very well. And in fact, today is Sharad Purnima, very auspicious day. And it's also the beginning of the month of Kartik, which is this Damodar Leela, which was just read by Pari in Krishna book. So this month is actually a very, very special month. The whole month we celebrate this one pastime of the Lord, where his mother ties him to a mortar, which is such a fascinating Leela. So I would urge everybody to perhaps join us. We're having satsangs every day at 3:30 and maybe at 7 o'clock at night as well, just to go through this Leela again and again, because there's so many aspects to it.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. And for the children, because sometimes I know children get bored in satsangs, in Little Krishna is also, there's a pastime, this exact pastime of Damodarashtakam, and how, what happened and stuff. And it's a really animated, sort of cute way of showing it. So, and also, just to mention, like Prabhuji said, it's a really important month because everything that we do is multiplied by thousands. So anything we do that is obviously pious or good is multiplied by thousands. But similarly, on the other hand, anything bad that we do, of course, intoxication, illicit relationships, gambling, and eating meat, non-veg, is multiplied by 1,000 as well. So please be careful, please be mindful of what you're doing, just so that this month is most utilized for you. And so just moving on, can we have another reader, please?
I can read.
Of course, thank you.
Okay. Text 11. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Bertha. Text 12. Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world. Text 13. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Text 14. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. Text 15. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps.
Thank you so much. It was really clearly read. So the summary of verses 11 to 15 is that, most people know something about religion. And, it could be very little, but they know something. They know something about religion, something about God. But their understanding is often really blurry, and it's really misinterpreted. For example, people that know something about our religion or any others, they generally think it's, you have to give up so much. Man, how can I give up like eating chicken, or how can I give up onion and garlic? No, I could never. But they don't understand the meaning behind it. They're confused. They often mistake religion for irreligion. But when there is actually transcendental knowledge that is imparted through accurate understanding, then it can be cleared up. And in 3 verses, Krishna clears up 3 common misunderstandings of Eastern spirituality. So in verse 11, it addresses the misconception that all spiritual paths lead to the same destination. So, everyone thinks that, if I do this, I'm going to go to heaven. If I do this, I'm going to go to hell. So, but, that's not how it is. Krishna explains that while there is unity in diversity, there are also different gradations of spiritual elevation. Some take longer to reach him. So devotion isn't an easy thing to do, right? But when you do it, you'll realize that there's a lot of ways. So like when we in the past, for example, when we've looked at births, so when we looked at like people like the ladder, for example, we looked at people who just act like animals and do the basic stuff, mate, sleep, eat, drink. They take an animal birth, whereas those at the top of the ladder, Krishna Prema, they go back to the spiritual world, to Golok Vrindavan. So there's a lot of different gradations, and it's not all the same because it depends on how you use your devotion, how you utilize, how you understand God. Verse 12 addresses the misconception that Eastern scriptures talk of polytheism and the worship of many gods. So this is a really big misconception, actually. I was also a part of this misconception. Now, in Hinduism, right, we see that there are a lot of gods. We know, there's quite a lot. But what we fail to understand is the difference between demigods and the Supreme Personality. Now, the demigods, they are not independent of Krishna. Krishna is independent, but no one is independent of him. So it's like a really big misconception. Everyone believes that all the demigods are, you know, my god, and Krishna is just another, like he's a god, but he's just another sort of demigod in a sense. But they fail to understand the difference, and they think there's actually a lot of gods, whereas it's re-emphasized again and again in the Bhagavad Gita as well as the Bhagavatam and in many Puranas that Krishna is the one god. Everyone else, it's sort of like a government system. Like Krishna's at the top, so he's like the president, the prime minister, and then you have all the other departments that are taken care of by the demigods. And so we can actually refer to this system as multi-layered, polymorphic bimonotheism. The really interesting thing about Hinduism, right, or Sanatana Dharma, is that Krishna's at the top, and when we say Krishna is one god, we call it a monotheistic religion. For example, Islam as well, they say that they have one god, Allah, so that's why it's known as a monotheistic religion. But Hinduism is not only monotheistic, it's also bimonotheism, because Krishna and Radha, so bi means two, so that's also another way we can say it. Like we have two, which are, I mean, ultimately they're the same, but again, those two are known as the creators of the world, right? But then there is also polymorphia, because it's a multi-layered system. There are many demigods. So Hinduism is essentially the only religion that contains all these three sort of levels, and it can be really clearly identified, but of course people misunderstand it. And then in verse 13, the concern is addressed that the caste system is unfair and exploitative, but Krishna outlines that the true criteria and purpose of such classification. So many people in the Eastern world, most of us live here, but you know, many people think that the caste system is really unfair, or you know, Brahmins are at the top and Shudras are at the bottom. It's nothing like that. Krishna actually explains, when we you know go on further into the chapters, we see that the system is actually on basis of the qualities of the person. It's not to do by birth. It's not to do by someone. If someone says you're a Shudra, you're a Shudra. That's not how it is. It's not by birth or just by being told. It's actually the qualities and the sort of activities that you're interested in. And so lesson 16 is that Krishna indicates that he reciprocates according to our commitment to him. So you know, it's quite often said that when we take one step towards Krishna, he takes 100 steps towards back. So even if we just try to take one important step to him, we get 100 steps back to us. So that in that manner he reciprocates to us, and it's a mutual relationship with him. Not 100, 10, but you know, it's actually the same. I feel that he's taken 100 steps to me. He's become a really important part of my life. So I didn't see that next slide, but yes, the more we connect with him, the more he connects with us. Anything to add, Prabhuji?
Only thing I wanted to add was, although Krishna is regarded to be Avatari, the fountainhead of all incarnation, he has many expansions like Balaram, Ram, Vishnu, who are as powerful as him. They're not demigods, they are also supreme. And those who worship these personalities, they will also go to the spiritual world. It's important to identify that that's where it comes from, this polymorphic is basically one god, many expansions.
Yeah, exactly. So when we also refer to Krishna, you know, he has had incarnations of Ram, Narsimha Dev, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but these are not demigods either. They are just expansions of him, and they are actually we say incarnation in English, but it doesn't actually give the proper meaning of it. What it is actually a divine descent. It's not an incarnation. Incarnation is quite simplistic words. It's actually when Krishna comes here, it is his divine descent again into this world. So like Prabhuji said, Balaram and all these other personalities, they come down as a divine descent of Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So can we have a reader for text 16, please? Even if you've already read, I do not mind. You can read again.
Lokeshwar, you want to read?
Text 16. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing that you shall be separated from all mystery. Text 20. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what is action, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. One who sees an action and inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in a transcendental position, although engaged in all spiritual activities. Text 19. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is the goal of desire for self-gratification. He is said by his sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Text 20. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, either engaged. It's just that I can't.
In all kinds of activities.
Okay, thank you. Text 21. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. Text 22. He who is satisfied with gain, which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. Text 23. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in the transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. Text 24. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered to the of same spiritual nature.
Pari, actually, I muted you, so you probably need to unmute.
Okay. Thank you, Lokeshwar. Yeah, so I know text 18 must have been a little bit confusing for you to read, the action and inaction part. But when we look at the summary, it's going to be a little bit more clear. So karma means action, but it also it refers to a universal law of nature. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Many of us have learned that in material science, and it's come from spiritual science. So bad karma brings bad reaction, and thus, obviously it's undesirable. You wouldn't want to do that. However, Krishna further explains that even good karma should be avoided since it binds one to material existence. So he's not saying, don't do anything good. But in the next bullet point, beyond good and bad activities are activities performed on the spiritual level. That is action which yields no reaction and ultimately frees one from the anxieties and entanglements of this world. So, yes, obviously bad karma is bad, but good karma should also be avoided because it sort of binds you to the material existence. Let's say I did something good, for example, and I've received the fruit of that, and I've gotten really attached to that fruit. That will then bind me to this material world. But if I was to do that good thing, keeping Krishna in mind and keeping Krishna in the center of that would actually bind me to him and take me to, Golok Vrindavan, his spiritual world. So it wouldn't bind me to this material existence in a way. So that's why akarma is what we do when we keep Krishna in the center of our activity, and then we perform it, so that neither we are given a bad fruit for it or a good fruit, but rather just his devotion. We excel in his devotion. The intricacies of karma are very difficult to understand. So it is a little bit hard, but with time, it will take time to understand. It took me time definitely to understand, but I'm sure you all are much more clever than me anyways, it's fine. Lesson 17, often we may be at the receiving end of rough justice and feel aggrieved by other people's actions. So we always think that we're always the ones in trouble, and we always get rough justice, and often sort of provoked by other people's actions. And this makes us angry, but this injustice is it's likely to do with our previous actions, and it can be actually referred to in our previous lives. So if we've done something not great in our previous life, then we often receive the fruit of that in this life, and we always think about, why did this happen to me? But taking responsibility for what has happened to us, and understanding that there's a reason for everything that happens, it makes us less bitter and better able to cope. So we actually understand that this must be the fruit of something I've done in my past life. I just need to stop being bitter about this and move on. So the way we complain that everyone why did this happen to me, but we never complain when good things unexpectedly happen. So either you do both or you don't complain at all is what we're trying to say. So this is the difference. Karma is pious action. We enjoy the fruit of that action, and then we rebirth. So we reincarnate. And then vikarma is sinful action. We suffer as a result of that fruit, and then we rebirth again. So in both of these are rebirth, but in the last one, akarma is what we want to do. It's inaction, only bliss, because we put Krishna in the center of what we do, and there is no rebirth. So we never come back to the spiritual world. So as you sow, so shall you reap. That's a pretty, I'm sure it's a really common idiom used, but yeah, it applies here as well. As you sow, so shall you reap. Now, Arthur Ashe, he is a really important example as a part of this chapter, actually. So he's a really sort of legendary Wimbledon player, and he ended up having cancer. Now, everyone, whenever we hear that word cancer, it makes a lot of people just freeze up, and because we realize there's no cure for it. There's even cures, they sometimes work and they sometimes don't. And so from all over the world, he receives letter from his fans, one which said, why does God have to select you for such a bad disease? Why did it have to be you? So to this, he actually replied, all over the world, there are 50 million children that start playing tennis. 5 million actually learn to play tennis. 500,000 learn professional tennis. 50,000 come to the circuit. 5,000 reach the Grand Slam. 50 reach Wimbledon. 4 to semi-final, 2 to the finals. And when I was holding a cup, I never asked God, why me? And in today, in pain, why should I not be asking God, why me? So he's actually conveyed here that so many people want to be at the place where I am. And yes, of course, the cancer, and it's not an ideal situation. But when I was holding that Wimbledon cup, when I was holding that cup of my achievement, why didn't I ask God, why me? So again, if you don't complain in both instances, you shouldn't complain at all. So he's a great example for this. Again, we have no right to ask when a sorrow comes, unless we ask the same question for every joy that comes our way. So Lord Rama actually said this to Lakshman. Lakshman, when he questioned, why did Sita have to be taken away? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Actually, Lord Rama replied with this. So you can see very learned personality. Can I have a reader from? Oh, before we have a reader, actually, Prabhuji, anything to add?
Yes, very good explanation. Now, this point about good karma, whether we should do good karma, I don't think anybody is discouraging anybody from doing good karma. Just going to put you on mute.
Yes, Prabhuji, that's fine.
Okay. The point is to understand that if we do good, we're going to get a reaction, a good reaction. But that reaction is still going to keep us in this world. So the point is to convert that good karma, that good action, into a spiritual action. I'll give you one example. We like to feed people. When we see somebody hungry, we really naturally, this is something that really wants us to do something about it, right? So, and it's good to feed people. Absolutely, that's good karma. But instead of feeding them just ordinary food, one can feed them prasad. Now, you might ask, how do we do that? It's probably one of the easiest things to convert ordinary food to prasad. For example, often when we go to Croydon, we see many people on the streets, they're asking for money and food. So generally we would go to a market, a fruit market, or go to Sainsbury's or whatever there is near there, get some fruit. We offer it to the Lord within our mind. My dear Lord, please accept this offering. And then we give that fruit to whoever wants it, the needy people. So in that way, that act isn't just a good act, it's a spiritual act, because you're giving prasad. You're not going to get a reaction for giving, a good reaction or a bad reaction. You're not going to get good karma for that. You're going to get spiritual karma, which is eternal, which will take us back eventually to the spiritual world. So nobody is saying don't do good karma. Just dovetail that good karma into a spiritual activity. And pretty much every good action can be converted into a spiritual activity. There may be one or two which are a little tricky, but mostly they can be converted. So it's just a change of consciousness from good consciousness to God consciousness. That's the point. Okay, I wanted to stop there. So Pari, please continue.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That was an amazing example. Yeah, so just like you said, no one's deterring you from doing any good karma. We just convert that into our karma. A reader, please, for text 25.
Oh, we've got Harit. Harit, would you like to read, Harit?
Prabhuji, if you need to, you can mute me while they're reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Harit, over to you. You can read these texts in text 4, chapter 4. We can't hear you, Harit.
Can you hear me?
Very, very light. Say some more things.
Can you hear me now?
Do it a little louder, okay?
Can you hear me now?
Still a little soft. Yes, that's better.
Okay. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods, offering different sacrifices to them, and some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Some the unalterated Brahmacharis sacrifice the hearing process and the senses of fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects or senses in the fire of senses. Text 27. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through the control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all senses and their life breath as relations to the fire of controlled mind. Text 28. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened with sacrificing their possessions and other by performing serve all spiritualists, but by practicing the yoga of an identified mystically, or studying the Vedas to advance their transcendental knowledge.
Is there any more, Pari? Yeah. Thing is,
It's Prabhuji, 29, so he can continue reading.
yeah, sorry, Pari, I muted you. Actually, it's quite hard to hear you, Harit. Say a little bit more.
But, can you hear me now?
Yeah, speak a little slowly and loudly, okay?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
No. Echo. Yeah, that's better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Still others who are inclined to the process of breathe restrained to remain in the trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath is into the outgoing, and thus at last the remain in trance, stopping all breathing, others curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having taste. Sorry, where are we again? I just lost track.
Hang on. There. You're on text number 30.
Yeah. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of all the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. O best of Kunudyanas, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? Text 32. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. O tested of the enemy, sacrifice to perform knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of the material possessions. After all, O son of Pratha, all the sacrifices of work communicate in transcendental knowledge.
There's more. If you want to read these as well, huh?
Okay.
Or, hang on, somebody else would like to read? So iPhone, would you like to read? No.
Shall I read?
Yes, go for it. Thank you.
It's from text 35, yeah?
34, yeah?
34, okay. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Text 35. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. Text 36. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Text 37. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ash, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Text 38. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. One who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time.
And you can go right.
Shall I carry on?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Very clear
Text
reading, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Text 39. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Text 40. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Text 41. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus he is not bound by the reactions of work, O conqueror of riches. Text 42. Therefore the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Over to you, Pari.
Thank you so much for the readers that read. That was amazing and really clear reading. So the chapters, okay, sorry about that, guys. There's a lot of people here now, but we're almost to the end anyways. So the chapter of the verses of summary of verses from 25 to 42. In order to acquire, understand, and realize transcendental knowledge, one must make a sacrifice. Sacrifices help refine one's character so no one becomes eligible to achieve this knowledge, and impact of transcendental knowledge is as follows. Become self-realized. Even a sinner can cross beyond this ocean on the boat of divine knowledge, and doubts will be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. So we read through the verses, but in a sense what it's saying is that sacrifices actually help one sort of become more eligible in a way, because you're not bound to anything. When you sacrifice something, you give it up, and it sort of it builds you up to perfectly renounce. And one of the biggest sacrifices is to relinquish one's pride by humbly submitting oneself before the bona fide guru. So generally in a world where people have a lot of pride and ego, the best way to become sort of a master in transcendental knowledge and help sacrifice is to actually submit before a guru. By faithful service and sincere inquiry within such a relationship, the heart becomes fertile ground for spiritual knowledge to blossom. This is the third time the matter of guru is coming up. Yeah, so this is actually the third. So this is a really, really sort of reiterated theme throughout the Gita, a guru and submitting to one. So the third time, because Dhritarashtra in 1.1 is, that's where it starts off. Then Arjuna in 2.7, when he asks, how does a guru sit? How does he talk? How does he walk? And then Krishna himself, when it's referred to, he refers to his own, how he's submitted to a guru, Sandipani Muni. So so many people ask, like, how can I actually get a guru? How do I know if he's qualified or bona fide? Well, this is basically the list of a bona fide guru, right? The teachings, the character, realization, ability to liberate others, his disciplic succession, and activities. So the teachings are sort of good. Like he doesn't speak about himself. Like he speaks about Krishna and his pastimes and his leelas and the matters related to him. He never presents anything not to be found in Vedic literature, so he doesn't sort of misinterpret or make up stuff from his own mind or whatever. He doesn't contradict sadhus or scriptures. He never goes against them. He doesn't manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. So he doesn't make up rules again against scriptures. He is able to answer any question on spiritual life without hesitation. He never says, I am God. That's a really big one. In India, we find many sadhus and sants and how they claim to be God. That is never an indication of a bona fide guru. He must be a master of the science of Krishna. So that is his teachings. Character, he must be a perfect devotee, must always follow the absolute process of devotional service. He must fully be in control of the 6 pushing senses, strictly practices what he preaches. He's an acharya who teaches by example. For example, Srila Prabhupada, we call him A.C. Bhaktivedanta Acharya Srila Prabhupada. So Acharya, that title. Krishna he has to maintain a character because even Krishna himself had to set an example. He's by nature very kind and compassionate and tirelessly instructs. Realization is that he must be fixed in the absolute truth. He must have the symptoms of one of the transcendental platforms. So the stuff in brackets is all where this evidence is found of a guru. So all these things you can find in like the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, for example. These are all like what Krishna himself says a guru should be. He must be 100% Krishna consciousness, not like half the time he's like, yeah, Krishna consciousness, and then the other half he's just pretty materialistic. Doesn't make sense. He should have attained the platform of Uttama Adhikari. He knows the science of Krishna again. Krishna, so the ability to liberate others is that Krishna or his bona fide representative. Sorry, I'm just going to let that person go. Okay. Krishna or his bona fide representative are the only persons who can release a conditioned soul from bondage. So he, in a sense, a guru is a bona fide representative of Krishna. So only either Krishna or that guru can liberate a soul. The spiritual master knows the nature of his students and is thus able to guide them to act in Krishna consciousness. So a spiritual master can actually sort of judge, has good character judgment. He's able to sort of look at the good and bad qualities of his students and like work towards Krishna consciousness with them. He can change the materially conditioned nature of a person and gradually elevate him to the perfectional stage. Activities, he's always glorifying Krishna and never tries to imitate the Lord, but always follows in his footsteps and disciplic succession. He comes in the disciplic succession. So for example, Srila Prabhupada, we know he's a bona fide guru because his Guru Maharaj was Bhaktivinoda Thakur Srila Prabhupada. So it's a system that you follow. It's a process. Not just anyone can become your guru. Therefore, he does not deviate from instruction imparted millions of years ago. Must have heard the Vedic knowledge from the right source and the importance. So the importance of disciplic succession. Then we look at the qualification of a disciple, because yes, of course, the guru must be important, but the attitude of how a disciple should, how it should present himself or herself. One must be awakened to one's position of suffering in the material world. So basically what this is saying is you should know that this material world is not meant for us. You should understand that this is just a place where everyone suffers. One must have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, of course, faith and that respect for Krishna. One must have faith in the Guru and Krishna. So never, challenging and questioning. You can, of course, if you question or inquire in a submissive manner, that's fine. But challenging and repeatedly questioning a guru it gives off a wrong impression. So it leads to the next point, which is one must be submissive in questioning and everything else towards a guru. One must be fully obedient. One must have a serving mood. One should consider the order of the guru as one's prime duty in life and respect the guru as a god. and one must be anxious to satisfy the Guru and serve other disciples of the Guru. So these are all the qualifications of a disciple. Of course, in the middle it says a disciple must be ready to be disciplined. That's where it comes from. A disciple comes from disciplined. So in that sense, if you want to become a disciple, you must learn how to be submissive in that manner. And that's the last slide. Thank you so much, everyone. I know this was a really, really hard, in a sense, hard way to listen to everything. But I'm so thankful that all of you joined. And I'm outside right now, so that's probably why it's really noisy. But thank you so much for joining. And I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for presenting. I know it was very good, actually. It is a little hard to listen to, but I'm glad you made the effort. It shows your commitment to, it's easy to say, no, I can't do it, but you actually made the effort and made the presentation. So I'm very grateful to you, Pari. Hopefully next week it'll be a little bit
Thank you.
audible. So, any quick questions?
I feel like there won't be many because Ishwari and Kishori aren't here, if I'm right.
Yes, they couldn't make it today. So, otherwise, anybody, any questions? Yes, Harit.
Why?
Yeah.
Why should you be anxious to be a?
To be?
Oh, so is that? Yeah, I think he's referring to the qualifications of a disciple. So obviously, when we say anxious, we sort of think of like a negative. We think of it in a negative way. But to be anxious to please your guru is one of the best anxieties you can have, because it's sort of a hunger to make him happy, make someone who is liberating you happy in a sense. So don't take it in the negative way and you should be like crying to please him, but it's like you should always have it at the back of your mind that I have to do this, and it's sort of positive anxiety. So Prabhuji, anything else?
No, that's good. Yeah, it makes sense. That anxiety is actually spiritual. It's not anxiety which is material, as Pari said. So that anxiety will purify one's existence. I must try to please my guru, must try to please Krishna. What can I do to please him? It's really good. Otherwise, our normal anxiety is, what is going to go into my belly tomorrow? What is mom gonna make? I need some nice chips and beans. That sort of anxiety is very selfish, but the anxiety to serve the Supreme Lord and his devotees is very purifying. Good question, Harit. Good question. Harit, are you coming later to the temple?
I don't think so, but
we're gonna miss you. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions?
Thank you for your question, Harit. If there aren't any more questions, then I should probably get going.
Yes, you can leave. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Hopefully we'll see everybody next.
Yes, and hopefully next time I will definitely try to present without all the background noise. But thank you so much, everyone. I wish you all a great Kartik month and happy Diwali in advance. Thank you so much for joining again after so many weeks. Thank you, Prabhuji, for always giving me your input.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Take care.